Welcome and welcome to Career Coaching After Hours. I'm your host, John Davidson. Thank you for joining me. It's episode 20 already, and the music is kicking in, so hopefully we've got the music levels tuned up just right where you can enjoy the tunes, and it might even drown out my nasally voice. So I thank you for joining me. Can't believe it's 20 episodes in, and so I hope you're taking care of yourself. 2025 has been a really interesting ride and quite of a roller coaster of a year, but here we are halfway through. So I want to dive into one of my favorite topics is the Fortune 500. And if you've seen my writing or you've listened to my YouTube videos, you know that I like rankings because sometimes they let us see the forest for the trees, or maybe we can dig into the data around innovative companies or large companies, great places to work. So this is Fortune Magazine's flagship ranking, and it's the 71st ranking, so that's exciting. It's been around for quite a while, and we've seen some interesting movement this year. So whether that's an increase in female CEOs, and we see 22 organizations pop onto the list this year. We have some newcomers. And here in the PNW, we have a little bit of a sea change. So I'll dive into some of these topics. So I appreciate you joining me as we dig into the Fortune 500 2025. Onwards and upwards. So as usual, a few disclaimers and sound bites. So this series is maybe just as valuable to hopefully you, the audience, as it is to me. So I meditate or expand on things that I deal with in sessions or things that I write about, topics, what have you. And so as I mentioned, 2025, a lot of trepidation, a lot of questions about what's happening with supply chain and tariffs and AI. So it is also plugged in and unplugged. So you might hear some of my favorite music in the background there. But likely I'm not your career coach. You might want to consider hiring your own career coach or consulting with a true career counselor if you have questions about maybe your own career moves. But I would also say check your sources. Feel free to double check my sources here and take a look at some of the data. If you subscribe to Fortune Magazine, one of the nice advantages is you get access to fortune.com and you can sort and search the data for yourself. Kind of interesting. So I've nudged many folks over the years, don't skip Fortune Magazine, as in whatever industry you're in or profession you're in, Fortune probably touches on that, whether you're in medicine or law or aerospace, supply chain, or IT, what have you, big tech. Fortune tries to tackle a lot of different issues, and their flagship ranking is always kind of interesting to see some of the changes here. And as I mentioned, 70 plus years in the running, 19.9 trillion in revenue, employing 31 million people worldwide. Wowzer, we're talking big money, big numbers. So congrats to the top 10. Not a whole lot of change in the upper echelons of the 500, but we'll dive in here. We've see about 22 new organizations have popped in, but what I might also suggest and kind of put a pitch in for is to read some of the tangential articles or the sidebar articles that go along with the Fortune 500 ranking in Fortune Magazine. You know, diving into some of the issues that might be arguable on everybody's mind: tariffs and AI and supply chain and the jobs market, of course. But I think it has a kind of a measured approach. And I thought this quote was kind of interesting, is that you could say the Fortune 500 never been more stable and not a whole lot of massive moves. And yet we see some trepidation, or agita, as they mention in the article. So some kind of deep concern, whether it's Walmart or Amazon or Starbucks or what have you. You've got companies concerned about everything from how tariffs and global supply chains might change, all the way into AI taking over customer service roles and technology, coding, and a whole bunch of other areas. So do want to give a little bit of a shout out to here. There are 22 companies that were displaced. So here's the top 11, 1 through 11 new firms that kind of wedged into the list. And you might see some familiar faces in here: Palo Alto Networks and the spinoff GE Vernova, as well as Ace Hardware. And there's another bracket here too. This is 12 through 22. So not a bad idea to keep an eye on some of the displacement and the movement. You might see even like there's Yum Brands in there. So if you've ever had a fast food meal, you've probably eaten at a Yum Brands restaurant. But also aerospace kind of wedging its way back into the Fortune 500. And if you take a look at some of the data there, you'll actually see that they do rank up to the Fortune 1000. And you can sort by profitability, you can sort by your state. A lot of powerful tools there. But one of the stats that I think is really interesting, and I double check this, but feel free to check my math, is female CEOs. I counted 55 for the year. And so that's 5 up from last year. So really interesting. There you go. Here's your top 10. General Motors, Elevance, Citigroup, Centene, Fannie Mae, Marathon, UPS, Albertsons, Progressive, Oracle, all have a female CEO. And I think that's interesting that you can track that. Of course, you can track things like growth in jobs, profitability, and other areas. So take a look at the data. So whether you're interested in the economy or the jobs market, I think well worth paying attention to some of this intel. But you might also want to take a deeper look at your neck of the woods. And so here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm calling that Washington, Oregon, Idaho. We're actually down one. Wowzer slipped off the list, but the others are still there. Amazon, Costco, Microsoft, Starbucks, PACCAR, Coupang, and Nordstrom, Expedia, Alaska, Expeditors, and Lululemon. I'm still a little unsure about why Lululemon is on the list, but they're still arguably headquartered in Vancouver, BC, but sure, put them in the Washington ranking. Why not? Who doesn't love Lululemon? So congrats for stabilizing. And I'll dive into the top 4 because I've been writing about these organizations maybe a little bit more than average in the last couple of years. But there we see Amazon. Amazon's been in the news quite a bit as kind of a bellwether, not just in terms of AI and tech and what they're doing in the cloud, but also for supply chain and what's happening to their business model in terms of so many sellers being on LinkedIn, relying on goods from other countries, namely China, for their supply chain. So interesting to see that they're still stable and they're right underneath Walmart. And also kind of nice to see that even though they have an HQ2, they're still listed as an HQ1 here in Washington State. So there we be. And I just had to put this in doing some research here, but correct me if I'm wrong. I've been to the Costco headquarters once, and so I do want to have a return visit. So, but apparently Costco has some of the nicest break rooms around, so that's been burning up the internet here just a little bit. Who doesn't like Costco? So, not too controversial. If that's the most controversial thing that you see about your Fortune 500, you're probably doing okay. Good job, Costco. But I almost made an episode kind of jumping in line in terms of Microsoft. So I've done some writing around, of course, the layoffs. So we're in the 15,000 layoff realm here this year, 2025. But one of the things I thought was really heartening on LinkedIn, and I called a few folks out, is sort of this community response to all of these layoffs in gaming, where arguably it's because of infrastructure investments in AI or maybe efficiencies in AI. But it's really neat to see the gaming industry, as a key piece of Microsoft's puzzle, you could say, where people have stepped up and said, hey, we've got jobs at Epic Games or Visual Concepts or 2K or various publishers and game studios. So really actually kind of heartening to see that, maybe not ironically, on LinkedIn of all places, which is of course owned by Microsoft. But in the news more, we've seen some interesting articles come out about some of the senior leadership at Microsoft suggesting maybe AI could help people find jobs or maybe transition into a new role. And so that got a lot of criticism, and there was some blowback there. And we've even seen feedback and kind of comments in the news from Satya Nadella's comments about how Microsoft could have these record profits, and they're now in the $4 trillion club. They've got blowout earnings, but this idea of the enigma of success, as in perhaps layoffs are somewhat necessary or streamlining. And we saw Microsoft drop in the rankings, and I called that out in my article on LinkedIn. Thought that was interesting. I hadn't realized that they had actually dropped a spot, and that was right about on the heels of the start of their fiscal year. So I do believe that corporations take this very, very seriously in terms of their rank and staying stable and staying sharp. And one of my other favorite brands, Starbucks, to call them out, really interesting. I mean, they're seeing competition from Luckin Coffee, and they are actually getting a foothold now here in the United States, which is interesting to see in the news. But they dropped 10 spots on the Fortune 500, and I just noticed that doing some of that research. And this is after I'd written an article where now Starbucks has maybe another example of the pendulum shifting, where companies are scooching back and away from flexible work-life balance. And so now their corporate employees had to be in the office 3 days a week. Now that's changed to 4 days a week. And I thought that was a little interesting when, gosh darn it, couldn't they have all of those Starbucks employees go back to the actual locations for a day? So silly me, I think there's kind of an excluded middle idea there, where maybe the staff could actually work at a Starbucks one of those 4 days. Just a thought. Their CEO still hasn't called me, so if you'd like to put in a word for me, that'd be great. But yeah, this is a relatively short episode, so I try to keep them under about 30 minutes, but I would nudge you to take a look at the Fortune 500, do some searching, do some sorting. That maybe will impact your thoughts on where you work, where you might want to work, or maybe the economy as a whole. But let me know. Am I on target? Am I off base? Did I miss anything? Is my research goofy? Let me know. There are the sources for this episode right there. I tend to look at Fortune. It's one of my regular sources there among some of these others that you see on your screen. So if you'd like to reach out to me, please do. Oh my gosh, let me know. Like, subscribe. Let me know if you'd like to see content in different topics or different areas, on different topics, or in different areas. Those are my websites. Feel free to email me as well. And thank you for all the wonderful artists that have gone into the mix, from calming sounds. Again, hopefully it makes my YouTube videos a little more tolerable. But thank you for joining me, and definitely take care of yourself. I hope you're weathering what's going on in 2025 well. And like I say, if you do have ideas for future topics, future episodes, let me know. Feel free, drop me a line, send me a note right here in YouTube land. And thank you, clients. Where would I be without you? You're all amazing. You're rock stars. You folks keep me going. Supporters, all the comments, LinkedIn and elsewhere, and here on YouTube. I appreciate it. My students, and you, the viewers. I really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. So I'll see you soon for episode 21. I can hardly believe it. Okay, thank you very much, and take care. All right, bye-bye.